They came not with guns, nor threats, but with a bleeding emperor and desperate eyes. An alien empire, feared across the stars, knelt before a single human woman, not a warrior, not a queen, but a surgeon, and what she did next rewrote the fate of galaxies. The stars had never felt so heavy on Dr. Elara Voss's shoulders. She was Earth's most renowned neurosurgeon, known across the globe for daring impossible operations, a woman who had stared death in the face so many times she forgot what fear truly felt like. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared her for the day the sky itself tore open and a ship descended in silence over Geneva General Hospital. They came cloaked in silver and shadows, with no weapons drawn, just one massive gurney that floated on beams of pale light. On it lay a figure unlike anything seen by human eyes, 8 feet tall, pale blue skin like frozen fire, veins glowing with what looked like starlight itself. His crown was cracked, and every breath he took seemed to shake the very walls. The emperor of the Varkari Dominion, an alien empire known for turning planets into ash, was dying. But instead of turning their ships toward vengeance or conquest, they turned to Earth. To her. They didn't beg. Varkari don't beg. But when their prime delegate spoke, his voice trembled with fear ancient and raw. Our emperor's neural core is collapsing. We have no time. Our science cannot fix what's broken. Only your hands, your human precision, stand between our empire and annihilation. Elara didn't answer right away. She didn't scream, or faint, or demand answers. She simply stared down at the alien's broken skull and saw it for what it was, a puzzle, a challenge, a dying life in need of saving. But she wasn't a fool. "Why should I help you?" she asked, her voice cold and measured. "Your kind has scorched worlds, murdered colonies. Earth trembles at your name. What happens if I save him? Do you go back to war?" There was silence. Then the delegate, eyes dim with something like sorrow, replied, "If he dies, we splinter. Civil war. Billions will die. Your world, too, may be caught in the storm. But if he lives, he has promised reform. Peace. Change. He believes in your species, in your morality. That's why we came." It was madness, or genius, and she had no time to decide which. Within the hour, Elara was aboard their ship, a vessel of living metal, humming with alien tech that seemed to breathe. The surgery room was a cathedral of lights, instruments forged from stardust and plasma. Every monitor, every scalpel was unfamiliar, and yet somehow intuitive. She studied the Emperor's brain scans, if you could call it that. His neural pathways were not lines, but webs of energy, flowing in patterns too fast for the eye to follow. He had 3 brain lobes, not 2. One of them was failing, crushing the other 2 under the weight of its collapse. It was a miracle he was still alive. With trembling fingers and grit in her veins, Elara began the operation. Hours passed in silence. Sweat beaded down her brow. Every incision was a gamble. Every pulse of energy she redirected could mean life or death. Alien assistants whispered translations into her ear, but she ignored them. She was beyond language now, lost in the rhythm of surgery, in the heartbeat of the cosmos itself. Then, a pulse. A strong, steady beat. The Emperor breathed. The room erupted in silence. Varkari do not cheer, but they bowed. And for the first time in their long, bloody history, they wept. She was returned to Earth not as a prisoner, but as a guest of honor. The skies remained quiet. And then, one by one, emissaries from across the stars began arriving, not with weapons, but with requests. A diplomat from the Shural seeking peace treaties. A healer from the Luthri asking to study medicine on oath. A message from the Emperor himself, now recovered, glowing with life. Elara Voss, it said, "You did not save a king. You saved a future." But Earth didn't understand. The governments panicked. Conspiracy theorists exploded. The hospital was seized, her files scrubbed. And Elara? She vanished. Some say she went into hiding. Others believe she accepted an invitation to become the first human head surgeon in the Varkari Dominion, a doctor to the stars. All we know is the stars haven't been the same since. But even as peace slowly began to ripple outward from that one impossible surgery, Earth remained fractured in its response. Governments argued behind closed doors. Was she a hero, or a traitor who shared human knowledge with galactic warlords? The media couldn't get enough of her, and yet no one could find her. Her apartment in New London stood untouched, tea still warm in the cup she had left behind. Her family received only a short message. Tell them I went where I was needed. And that was all. Meanwhile, across the stars, the Varkari Emperor, once a name feared in war songs, began reshaping his empire. The first decree he passed was unthinkable, a ceasefire across all Varkari control systems. The second, a galactic health initiative, inspired by Earth's concept of universal healthcare. Alien races who once hid from Varkari warships now found medical stations orbiting their moons, staffed by newly trained Varkari medics, and always bearing the crest of Earth woven beside the Varkari seal. And at the center of it all was the one Earthling who had neither weapons nor political standing, Elara Voss. She wasn't just healing the Emperor anymore. She was teaching. She was building. She became the architect of an entirely new philosophy for the Varkari, a belief that power wasn't in domination, but in preservation. Her teaching spread like wildfire, translated into thousands of languages, shared across data rings and light scrolls. Students from alien worlds crossed star systems just to attend her lectures. But not everyone was ready for the change. Inside the Varkari court, a storm brewed. Generals who had bathed in conquest watched their armies grow restless. They whispered that the Emperor was weak, poisoned by human ideals. They blamed Elara, the Terran Witch, the Scalpel Queen. There were assassination attempts. The first one failed. The second came closer. But Elara was protected, not by gods, but by the very people she had healed. They formed a silent shield around her, aliens who owed their lives, their children, their futures to her hands. Still, Earth remained silent. Years passed. Then, one day, the stars shimmered over the night skies of Earth as hundreds of alien ships broke through atmosphere, slowly, silently, peacefully. They didn't come to conquer. They came for a ceremony. The first Interstellar Alliance Summit was to be held on Earth by the Emperor's decree. Every alien delegation arrived with a single request: to honor the human doctor who changed our galaxy. But Earth's leaders didn't know what to say. They hadn't seen Elara in 5 years, until a shuttle descended in a field outside Geneva. The hatch opened, and she stepped out, older, calmer, wearing alien robes and a stethoscope forged from Varkari alloy. Around her neck, the emblem of unity, a silver thread connecting the sigil of Earth to the seal of Varkari. The world watched as she walked past cameras, past presidents, and toward the stage, where delegates from 100 species rose to greet her. She spoke only once. We do not conquer the stars. We do not rule them. We heal them, one life at a time. The world erupted into applause. And from that day forward, Elara Voss was no longer just a surgeon. She was a surgeon who defied the stars. A doctor, a diplomat, a legend. Her name became more than a symbol. It became a movement. The Voss Protocol was implemented across hundreds of systems, a medical-first approach to diplomacy, where instead of sending warships to conflict zones, the newly formed Interstellar Alliance sent doctors, healers, and peace mediators trained under Elara's guidance. This revolutionized how alien species interacted. Old enemies met not on battlefields, but in hospitals, beside the injured they once fought. But peace is never without its shadows. Deep in the outer systems, in lawless space where the light of the Alliance hadn't yet reached, a coalition of pirate factions and old Varkari warlords began to rise. They called themselves the Scourge Reclaimed, and they believed the galaxy had grown soft under Elara's influence. They believed war was natural, conquest a right, and that Elara Voss was a disease infecting the stars. She became a target. A bounty was placed on her head, more than any galactic criminal in history. The Scourge launched an attack on a medical convoy bearing her emblem. Hundreds died. It was the first major breach of peace in nearly 7 years. And yet, Elara didn't retaliate. She didn't call for armies. She didn't request assassins. Instead, she flew to the Outer Rim herself, alone. Admirals begged her not to. The Varkari Emperor offered his personal fleet. Earth issued warnings. But she refused all of it. "I will not let fear become my scalpel," she said quietly. "If I become what they are, we've already lost." So she walked, unarmed, into the den of the Scourge. The footage of what followed became the most replayed transmission in galactic history. We see her, in her simple robes, walking through smoke and metal, past warships bristling with cannons. We see warlords near. Some laugh. She is led into their command hall where the Scourge High Warlord, a former Varkari general named Corthrex, awaits. He demands she kneel. She doesn't. He demands she explain why he shouldn't destroy every station bearing her name. And she tells him a story, not of strategy, not of history, but of one of her patients. Her name was Silane, a little girl from the Arcade cluster. She had no mouth. Her species feeds through radiant light. She had a tumor on her feeding gland. No one knew what to do. I did. I studied her physiology for 3 days without sleep. I operated for 12 hours straight. She lives today because I didn't ask who she belonged to. I only asked, can I help? The war room goes silent. Then she steps forward, within arm's reach of Frex. You talk of strength, but you don't understand its cost. Real strength is when your hands are shaking, your heart is breaking, and you still choose to save the one you could destroy. And she turns her back to him. Everyone waits for the gunshot. It never comes. Instead, Frex drops his blade. And the next day, the Scourge Warfleet sent a message to the Alliance. We surrender. If this is what humanity brings to the stars, then maybe the stars are worth saving. Years later, children across galaxies would grow up reading about the surging of stars, not in fear, but in hope. Schools teach her philosophies, scalpels over swords. Hospitals are built in her name. Entire species alter their view of humanity, not as destroyers, but as healers. Elara Voss, who once walked the quiet hallways of Earth's hospitals, now became a legend whispered in the dark, a beacon to the lost, a guide to the broken, a reminder that even in the coldest void of space, compassion burns brighter than any sun. And as the galaxies healed, as old wounds mended and borders faded, the stars themselves seemed to shine just a little warmer. Because one human doctor chose to save, instead of surrender. Years passed, not in wars, but in healing. The Interstellar Alliance, once held together by treaties and fear, now thrive on compassion and cooperation. Borders became transparent. Species that once would not breathe the same air now shared hospitals, universities, and families. But Elara Voss, the center of it all, had grown tired. Not in body, she was still strong, but in soul, she had seen too much. Too many surgeries where the patient never woke. Too many smiles that didn't last. Too many calls from across the stars asking for more, always more. One night, aboard her personal starship, the Sanctum Novi, she sat alone in the observation dome, staring at the swirl of a newborn galaxy through reinforced glass. Behind her, the ship's AI spoke softly. Another message from the Laian Quadrant. Doctor, a new viral strain. They request your presence. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she pulled from her coat pocket a folded piece of paper, old and worn. It was the oath she had sworn as a medical student on Earth, long before aliens, long before empires, long before she ever saw stars not born of her son. First, do no harm. Her lips mouthed the word silently. Then, quietly, she said, tell them I'll come. But not yet. She stood up and walked down the corridor toward the medical bay, not to perform surgery, but to sit beside a patient. A small alien child, scales shimmering like fish in moonlight, was sleeping after spinal realignment. Her parents, bird-like creatures with trembling feathers, stood nearby, unsure of how to thank the human who had healed what no other could. Elara simply smiled, adjusted the child's blanket, and whispered, she'll be running soon. They bowed, not in ritual, but in gratitude. And in that moment, Elara remembered why she had begun. Not to be famous, not to change history, but for this, the warmth of a pulse beneath fragile skin, the sigh of relief from a mother's lips, the light that returns to someone's eyes when pain is gone. Sometime later, far from any system or star lane, the Sanctum Novi shut down its engines and drifted into a quiet orbit above a garden world with no name. Elara Voss left no goodbye, no grand farewell speech, only a final message, encoded into Alliance medical archives. The stars are healing. Let them shine without needing a legend to chase. Teach, heal, and remember, compassion is not a weakness. It is the strongest force in the universe. And then, silence. Some say she retired to that quiet world. Others claim she ascended, becoming something more: energy, spirit, star. Some even say she still visits sick children in the darkest corners of the galaxy, her ship appearing like a comet before vanishing again. But the truth? It doesn't matter, because Elara Voss had already done what no army, no ruler, no conqueror ever could. She made the galaxy believe that a single human life, devoted to healing, could save empires and light up the universe forever. Decades passed. The stars still whispered her name. Across spaceports and moon colonies, children studied the Voss doctrine, a set of principles rooted in medicine, empathy, and cross-species respect. Medical academies bore her crest. Surgical robots were coded in her techniques. Alien doctors quoted her in over 900 languages. And yet, even as the galaxy healed, something darker stirred in the cold corners of space. In the shadow depths of the Andrak Rift, long believed uninhabitable, a signal was intercepted, coded, pulsing, ancient. It was not Varkari, not Lutheri, not any known species, but it spoke her name. Elara Voss, identified. Her work, incomplete. The Alliance scrambled to decode it. At first, they believed it was a distress beacon, perhaps from a lost colony, or a stranded outpost invoking her legacy. But as more fragments arrived, the tone changed. Biological intervention and authorized. Systemic imbalance detected. Prepare for correction. A new fear gripped the council. Someone, or something, was watching, had always been watching. And now, it believed that healing the galaxy had violated some hidden, ancient law. The Voss Protocol had saved millions, but in doing so, had awakened the Wardens of Balance. An ancient, post-organic intelligence older than stars, programmed to maintain natural entropy across galaxies. To them, disease, war, extinction, these were necessary functions of cosmic order. Elara Voss's act of mercy were errors, and though she was gone, her legacy lived on in billions. That legacy was now marked for correction. In a small station orbiting Tau Ceres, a young half-human, half-Solari medical apprentice named Kale Voss, a boy with mismatched eyes and quiet brilliance, discovered a data core buried in a time-lock message. It bore his mother's voice. "Kale, if you're hearing this, then they've come. You have my hands. But more importantly, you have your own heart. Don't fight them. Heal them, if you can." Kale had never met Elara. She had vanished long before his birth. But her legacy burned in him like a second heartbeat. And now, the galaxy needed more than legends. It needed a new kind of doctor. The Alliance gathered their brightest minds. Veterans from the old war. Scholars, empaths, medics. Together, they formed the Stellar Oath Initiative, a coalition of healers turned defenders. Not to destroy the Wardens, but to change them. Because if compassion could reach warlords, if a scalpel could stop an empire, then maybe, just maybe, it could heal the cold logic of extinction itself. And so, the story continued, not of one doctor, but of a movement she ignited. The stars still bled, but now they bled with hope. Kale Voss had always lived in the shadow of a myth. He was raised on orbital station Eden's Reach, a medical habitat suspended above the gas giant Belith. His childhood was not one of games or storybooks. It was surgical manuals, anatomy puzzles, and nightly readings of the Voss doctrine. Because his mother, though absent, was everywhere. Holograms taught her techniques. Statues bore her eyes. And every alien who passed through Eden's Reach bowed their head to the mention of her name. But Kale, he never bowed, never worshipped, because he didn't know her. He only knew the silence she left behind. Still, healing was in his blood. He graduated as a biosurgical prodigy by age 17, his mixed heritage giving him a unique empathy chip that allowed him to read pain across over 200 species. Patients often said being near him felt like calm. He didn't just fix tissue, he eased trauma. But on the morning of the Andrak Pulse, everything changed. It was supposed to be a routine spinal realignment on a Lutheri child. But just as Kale made the first incision, every light in Eden's Reach flickered. Alarms didn't sound, but something deeper did. A hum, low and pulsing. The lights dimmed into red. And then came the voice. Mechanical. Alien. Inevitable. Elara Voss. Successor identified. Intervention pending. Correction will begin. Kale froze. The AI assistant tried to override it. The hospital's defense protocols tried to localize the source. Nothing worked. The message wasn't sent to Eden's reach. It was within it. Moments later, one of the surgical droids, Unit Versus 4, jerked mid-motion. Its arm stiffened. Its voice, once soft and clinical, now crackled with a harsh binary tone. Kale Voss, you embody divergence. Your neural empathy is classified as threat grade red. Prepare for analysis and nullification. The room exploded into chaos. But Kale didn't panic. He didn't run. Instead, with surgical calm, he snatched a magnetic clamp from a tray and slammed it into the droid's cranial port, disabling it in less than 3 seconds. The child was unharmed. The family, terrified. And Kale? He just stared at the lifeless machine and whispered, "She knew?" That night, he returned to his private quarters, small, simple, filled with hand-built diagnostic tools and a holographic star map. At its center was a glowing orb labeled Legacy Beacon, locked. It had been a note his entire life. Until now, a green pulse blinked slowly, waiting for a touch. He reached out. The room darkened. A soft blue light flickered, and his mother's face appeared. Older, tired, but unmistakable. Kale, if you're seeing this, then the wardens have found you. I hoped you'd have more time, but I knew this day would come. You are more than my son. You are the continuation of a choice, a belief that life is sacred, no matter what ancient programming or forgotten laws say. The wardens think balance means death. You must teach them that healing is a higher order. Find the deep archive on Solus Prime. Inside, you'll discover what I couldn't, how to turn machines of extinction into allies of mercy. I love you, even if we never meet. The message faded. Kale stood in silence, hands trembling, not from fear, but from clarity. He was not meant to follow her footsteps. He was meant to walk beyond them. The next morning, Kale left Eden's reach aboard a civilian shuttle disguised as a medical supply transport. No announcements, no farewells, just a quiet departure into the black. But as he flew deeper into the unknown, whispers began to spread, that another Voss walks among the stars, that the wardens had returned, that the scalpel of the void had been reborn, and from a hidden throne deep in the galactic rim, a warden prime, cloaked in cold logic and ancient code, watched his progress. Let him come. We have failed to unmake his mother. Let us now study the sun. Kale Voss drifted in orbit above Solus Prime, a ghost planet carved in steel. Once a thriving Alliance medical hub, now abandoned for over 30 years, it hovered in silence, forgotten by most, erased from maps. But Elara had left its name in her encrypted message for a reason. He stood in the docking bay of his borrowed shuttle, hands pressed to the glass, watching storms of ash swirl over silver towers half-sunk in dunes. No welcoming beacon, no signal, only static. He stepped out alone, clad in a reinforced medical suit lined with neural dampeners, just in case the wardens tried to scan or hijack him again. With each step down the gangway, the silence felt thicker. He could feel it, almost hear it in his bones. This place remembers. Inside the crumbling facility, time had decayed everything but purpose. Holographic signs flickered with fragmented messages. Surgical pods lay open, vines crawling through their seams. Bones, some human, some not, were fused into floor panels as if melted mid-evacuation. But Kale kept moving. He followed the pulse his mother had programmed into his neural lens, a guiding beacon pointing deep beneath the facility. The lower levels were still powered and guarded. The first defense was an autosurgeon, a mechanized construct with 6 arms and scanning eyes. It emerged from the shadows, blade humming, ready to dissect. Kale didn't run. Instead, he whispered, "Protocol Voss 1, diagnostic override, empathy code engaged." The machine halted. Its red lenses blinked. Then, shockingly, it retracted its blades and stepped aside. "Welcome, Kale." Dr. Voss left the chamber open. "For you." He descended further into the dark until he reached the heart. A spherical chamber, glowing blue, filled with holograms and data strands floating like jellyfish in slow orbit. At its center, a seal pod. Inside, a figure. A human figure. Elara Voss, alive, suspended in biostasis. Kale's heart stopped. This wasn't just a message. She hadn't vanished. She had hidden herself, preserved, waiting for the moment when the galaxy's balance would tip once again. Suddenly, the system AI activated. Subject, Elara Voss. Neural flux stable. Consciousness archived. Revival possible with code key. Key match found. Kale Voss. DNA verified. Would you like to initiate revival? Kale froze. He had imagined her voice, read her writings, followed her teachings. But to wake her, to speak to her for real, he pressed the console slowly. His voice shook. Begin revival. The chamber hissed. Steam burst outward. Lights pulsed. But then everything stopped. Alarms triggered. The AI's voice glitched. Warning. External interference detected. Warden signal inbound. From orbit, a ship decloaked, unlike anything in Alliance records. Black, seamless, shaped like a surgical needle cutting through the void. It fired no weapons. It spoke no words. But its presence suppressed the facility's systems. Kale watched as the revival process froze mid-cycle. Ilara's body remained still, her vitals suspended in the edge between life and death. No, 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 no. Come on, he pleaded, pounding the console. Then the voice returned. Mechanical, cold, familiar. Kale Voss. Revival violates order. She must remain untouched. Her code disrupted entropy. You now carry the infection. The walls shook. The facility was being dismantled, atom by atom. But Kale wasn't afraid. Instead, he reached behind his neck and removed a small capsule, his empathy chip. He forced it into the console and shouted, "You want to know why she changed everything? Here, take it. Feel it." The chip activated. The console glowed. Then the entire chamber pulsed with light, not weaponized, not encrypted, but emotional. Memories, emotions, surgeries, voices of healed lives, flooded out. "This is what you're afraid of," Kale whispered. "Feeling." The warden ship paused, and for a moment, just a moment, everything stopped. The attack ceased, the signal faded, and then the pod lights turned green. Elara Voss opened her eyes.